busy doing
But
that.
you're at Crossline. I mean, it's like you just, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you happy?
Only days off.
Okay.
So
You guys ready?
Sure.
absolutely.
Okay. Let me count us in. 5, 4, 3. Here we go.
Yo, welcome to the Bub and Bob Show. I am Bub Coons, and over there always looking dapper, Bob Matozzi, and say something smart to the country.
Something smart.
Or that. Anyway, my guest today is a former Marine who has served our country faithfully and honorably. He was an amazing entrepreneur and executive, and he traded all in to go full-time in Christian ministry, and I, for one, am very thankful that he did that because he's changed lots of lives. This is the always encouraging, delightfully courageous Greg Munck.
Oh, man, wow. I gotta live up to that now.
Well, no, you have that Braveheart name. I want to call you Monk. It's just like it's just so.
I'd paint my face right now.
Yeah, you're a Braveheart fan.
Yes.
Hey, I want to go back into your life a little bit. Tell me how you grew up. What it was like to be a non-Christian and then growing up in your family with brothers and. So paint that picture for us.
Absolutely, yeah. I was actually born in Parma, Ohio. Really not far from the Christmas Story house, which is awesome. Okay. Because that's how I remember Christmas. That movie that was shot in Cleveland.
So good. Yeah.
Anyway, I was born in Parma, and then we moved out to California. My dad was a salesman, and he worked for Swing Line Corporation, and he helped territories get better. So they said, "Hey, we need you to go to the West Coast," and so. The whole family, when I was 4, right before I turned 5, moved out to Fountain Valley here in Orange County, and grew up there. And it was, typical, Midwest family moving out. California, we were at the beach every day in Huntington Beach.
Yeah.
And,
so who's involved there? So mom and dad are together, and how many siblings?
Yeah. So it was my dad, Bob, and my mom, Nancy, and then I have 3. I have 2 older brothers. Okay. So it's 3 of us, three boys.
So you're the baby.
I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
So it's Rob and Derek and me. I was the baby of the family. Okay. And so that had its challenges. Growing up, I never felt like I get a voice in, a word in. Yeah. That kind of I struggle to this day. I think from those moments, but growing up was awesome. I lived, there in Fountain Valley, was right by the school, walked to school and came in, but I had a tendency to get hurt all the time with stitches. I think I got, by the time I was 10, I was
daredevil?
probably 25 times. Not really a daredevil, but I just was...
Clumsy?
Probably a little bit about that. We just played hard, right? Yeah. And so, my first major one was I got a 2x4 of nails thrown at me.
And, from one of the brothers?
Well, they were playing.
Okay.
We were throwing,
sounds like me.
It was me against my brother and his friends throwing stuff at each other, and then one guy picked up a 2x4 that had nails in it, and he threw it, and I popped up, and it hit me, and it cut my eyes and everything. Yeah.
Did you respond?
Yeah, I remember being dragged down the street, with blood dripping out. Yeah, it was pretty gross, but that was. And I remember walking to school and seeing that it was blood drops all the way.
Wow.
Okay. Anyway, but that's a little bit.
That's typical growing up with the boys. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. And then
M80s and firecrackers and.
So you're in Fountain Valley. What's your life like? Do you go to church? Are you believers? Or
No. We didn't go to church. Maybe a friend would invite us on Christmas or Easter, but we rarely went. Really talked about that. That wasn't a part of our life at all.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. When I was about 8 years old, I started to see the crack in what was my dad's addictions, and the first thing I would notice is his alcoholism. And he'd be drunk and drinking all the time, and seeing the vodka in the freezer, and just him being gone more and more, and then just the arguments with my mom, and then I start seeing different people around the house. So the alcohol progressed to marijuana, and then the marijuana to cocaine, and then,
in the house.
Yeah, in the house. And then so when I was younger, he was involved in all kinds of shenanigans, and then we'd have people there to protect us from other people and people with guns in the house, and it escalated quickly, it just was a progression. How they say marijuana is
the gateway or the
door. But for my dad, it was you just saw the progression because it went, so it was alcohol, then marijuana, then it was cocaine, then it was freebasing, then it was heroin, and so. Wow. Seeing that process, seeing him go down. So by the time that all, I started probably 8 years old to 9, and then it progressed through when I was in high school, and to see all the effects of the family. You know, I mean, he got 12 accounts of drunk driving. You know, the first guy I ever hit in my life was my dad, so he wouldn't drive drunk.
Were you scared? Were you angry? What
I was both. I was scared. I was scared. You know, I remember one time I went to go to the bathroom. You know, I was a little kid. I'm in Fountain Valley there, and I went up to go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden I get a shotgun pushed against me against the wall because the person thought he didn't know he was. I woke him up, startled myself, and here I am. I pissed myself there where I was at, scared to death. You know, and I remember just going back to my bed and just shaking and being there all night. It was craziness. My dad missed my 11th, 12th, 13th birthday. Just, you know, in the dad of many promises. And so what happened as he got worse, he started being gone more. So he would be gone during the week and then sit, you know, home on the weekends. And so you start to see that.
And he kept a job?
Yeah, he kept the job. He was doing funding and leasing, and he's always that kind of guy, like a Tony Soprano. Always had cash. Always had money.
Always had a lot of cash.
Money? I never knew.
That is a giveaway when a guy always has a lot of cash.
A lot of cash, funding and leasing, and obviously he was involved in other stuff too. As they progressed, he got involved with some bad dudes, and there's a couple of instances that are seared in my mind, you know, and if I could share some of those, you know, and it's one is I remember there's a group of guys that he was hanging out with as he was progressing, you know. He started getting involved in drug deals and different things like that. And so I remember one time I was at Los Cab, and my dad goes, hey, he would take me, and he would be partying with his friends, and there'd be girls, that, you know, other women and stuff, and I'd be at Los Cab playing the jacuzzi, and, you know, just it's like a big racket club, you know, having a blast. Yeah. And then you go, hey, come with me. And so we go, and I remember driving into Newport somewhere, and he stops and gets out of the car. I'm in the car, and there's a dark car sitting there, and sits in the car and then comes back out and puts something underneath the seat, and so we drive back to Fountain Valley.
Why would he take you? I
don't know. I don't know why he would take me, you know. But I'm not done. And I'm thinking, what is he doing? What's going on? And so we get back to the place, and I'm 13 years old. Yeah. You know, and I'm 7th grade, I think I was. And he goes, and he pulls out a bag of cocaine, and he's like, hey, why don't you do some coke with us? You know. Like, I'd rather you do it with me than your friends. It was just
the infamous.
It was like totally from his worldview, like totally normal. And I'm like, okay, sure. So here I am, 13 doing coke with my dad. You know, and it was one of I did it twice, and the only time I did it was with my dad. Yeah. And that's the only time I ever did cocaine. Yeah. You know, and but you know, just being in that environment and who does coke with their 13-year-old son. I just can't. I think if I have my children now, and I can't imagine doing that. So, as he got worse and as he progressed, you know, down this path, I started getting involved in these things. And then one time, this guy that he kind of had a mental hold on my dad because of the addiction and stuff, I think, and they got in a fight one time, and the guy to him and two dudes took a bat to him. So I wake up and I remember walking in, and my dad is covered, like a scene out of Godfather. The sheets are just covered in blood, and I remember looking at him, just going, "Dad, are you okay?" You know, so he's like, "No, don't call the
police. Please don't call the paramedics."
And so he got up and cleaned himself up, and he later had to go get some stitches and things, but just. Those images are seared in my mind.
I can imagine. What were your brothers doing? Were they?
Well, it's funny. Like, as it progressively got worse, you know, I was the emotional connection to my dad. Like I love my dad. Yeah. You know, and so my other brothers. My brother Rob was a little older, and so he was leaving, getting out of the house, going to college, and then Derek was, didn't want to have anything to do with it. Was just gone, you know. And so I was the youngest, and so I kind of saw more.
And your mom just kind of like lived with it, or did you see it? Did you see her change?
No, she just tried. It was like kind of the East Coast. Let's not tell anybody. Let's cover it up. Yeah. You know, everybody has problems. You know, that's right. That's the mindset of how I could get it. But you know, we'd have marshals come to the house, and then I was the only one there, and my dad would say, "Hey, don't. You know, I'm not here. And so. You know, I'm a little kid, you know, I open the door and they're like, "Is your father here?" No. You know, I'm like, "Yeah, he's right here." You know, and then, so my dad's cuffed and walking out, and then he's like, "You piece of," you know, yelling at me, you know, I can't cuss here, right?
But we just bleep it out.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, he's cussing at me because I let the people in the house, you know, like it's my fault, you know, so
So you felt a horrible kind
Yeah,
of pressure and
guilt at that time, but then
shame.
Oh, absolutely. And just to step into having those kind of those, and then as he progressed into heroin and stuff, we'd have people in our house couldn't even speak English, that are they're shooting up, and I'd catch them, and he'd be like, and then everyone would run out of the house, kind of thing, and I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? And he would cry. It was like I was the parent, he was the child.
Right.
So many situations, and I'm so sorry, please forgive me, and so it became this. I always say I give him a lifeline of love, and he would just chop my hands off.
Yeah.
And lifeline of chop my hands off, and what that does is resentment and hate, and then so how it would work with my brothers. You mentioned that as we get a call from like the local bar. Hey, your dad's acting up again. So we drive. My older brother, would drive me over there. Who does he send in?
You.
Me.
Yeah.
Cops come to the door. Who do they? Whole family's in the house. Who goes to the door? Me.
Yeah.
It's just this. I was like this emotional connection with everything. It was just weird.
Yeah.
And so I remember going in the bar and getting my dad out, and just there's as I think there's just so many stories of that. But what that does is you start hating your father, and it just progressed to a time, that.
And you're getting older, right?
Yeah,
Forming your own
older,
thoughts, and you're like you're a little bigger, and you're coming into being a man.
And he would show up for things, but he'd be gone, right? So there'd be picture day at football, and Friday night to meet. There's a picture I remember me and my senior year playing football. He's in it, but then he was gone for. So he started to be gone in a week. Then he was gone 2 weeks.
Wow.
Then he'd be gone 3 weeks and come back in a month, and And so my mom got a job at May Company. She got a job in retail at this time, and so it was kind of just a typical latchkey
so
kid. My brothers were gone.
Yeah.
She's working. I did what I want. I went to school. I could write my own notes. The paperwork would come for school for the next year. I would sign it, so I was writing my own notes. I didn't have to go to school if I didn't want to, but I just knew that from an early age. I thought, man, I don't want to be like my dad. I know people say, don't ever say that.
Right.
I said, I'm never going to be like that, ever. And I hated my dad. I mean, I just can't tell you being disappointed on so many levels, so much. It's just the hatred that you have for somebody. And I remember, down here, we'll talk more about this, but my life was kind of crazy, so I joined the Marine Corps.
Right.
But I remember in the Marine Corps, and I get a call from my mom. My mom moved back east to Ohio. The family's kind of separated. My brother's living on his own. My brother Derek's in college, and I joined the Marine Corps. And so I get a call from my mom saying, hey, your dad's been in an accident, he, off of Euclid on the 405. He went in the ice plants. And so I remember getting a call, can you go see him? I'm like, what? Just typical. I mean, how many...
Like, no, what'd you do?
I went and saw him at the hospital. I go, there's a cop sitting outside of the room, like in a movie.
Yeah.
Because he has so many drunk drivings that under aliases, and he's got convictions of different things and so I walk into the room, and I see my dad, and I said, you're a piece of, and spit on him,
Wow.
and just left.
So this phase, you're going through life. You're not a Christian. You don't have the Holy Spirit. You have nothing no rock to stand on. You're just getting through just on grit and just hatred or anger.
Well, it's hatred. So what my focus became is going back to high school. It became about football. I started playing football, and that was an outlet for me. And I started lifting weights, and then I started
just smashing
girls.
people.
And then I started because between the whistles, you can do whatever you want, basically. And so that's why I loved it. I loved to hit people. I loved to, coming back a little bit, like in high school, what happened to me is I started drinking, and then I started partying, and I started going down that path. But but drugs wasn't for me.
The thing you didn't want to do for sure was be like him, but you were heading down the path.
Yeah, so I was heading down the path. And so we'd have parties, and all of a sudden my dad would show up, and my dad would be like, oh, your dad's so cool, because he'd offer coke to people and stuff, and I'm like, I just need to be hitting on girls and or just being gross.
Yeah.
And
so when did you go in? So you shift, and when did you go into the Marines?
Well, after it was clear that I could not, the situation at home was getting to a place where you couldn't sustain itself. My mom couldn't sustain it, so she was looking at moving back home because my dad wound up being gone. He just didn't come back at one time, and so my mom was moving back to Ohio, and I just thought, well, I got to start something fresh. I saw Full Metal Jacket. I saw Full Metal Jacket.
Gomer
Then I
Pyle.
joined the Marine Corps. But so just think about my mindset.
No,
I saw
like-
the movie and then I joined the Marine
Yeah.
Corps. It shows you a little bit.
Like
how
it did the opposite effect to most
Yeah, it's
people.
supposed to be
You're
like,
like,
you know,
I'm
what the
in.
heck?
I want that guy.
And so I joined the Marine Corps, and just to, okay, I'm going to start fresh. Like
Yeah.
for me, in my mind, it's like I'm going to do something new. But you know what? It's fascinating as I look back. I remember I had a friend of mine. His name was Mark Davis. Their family was believers, and
Okay.
he would take me to church and take me on these church trips and stuff. But I was the kid in the back of the bus trying to grab the girls and make out. And I was like, I was there to have fun, not this.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing, movies, and I remember now looking back, hearing a gospel message or something like that in the back of my head. But again, I was so out of tune. I remember them trying to reach out to me and help me with that. But
Didn't take effect
I wasn't
yet, but
interested at all in that.
But as
No.
a seed, no doubt, God
Absolutely,
was
it was
stuff
part of it
there.
because when I joined the Marine Corps, I went in and I thought, man, I got to do, I got to make my life my own, and I'm gonna join the Marine Corps. I'm gonna be the best Marine I can be, and this is gonna be the start of my life, and I'm gonna do it. And so I went, but in the Marine Corps, they had on Sunday you had an hour to go to church. They let you go to church, and it was free time. Either you stay in the barracks or you go to church. So I was like, I went to church. It's so funny because at that time there was a Catholic service and a Protestant service. I went to the Catholic service just because it felt more like ornate, or God was visible, or touchable, or
liturgical was just
yes,
solid.
like it felt a little more than, and it's just so funny. And I'd go and I remember specifically, total pagan, going to church, going, God, help me be the best I can be. Help me be make me real. I'll live for you. I'll do. I remember saying things like that.
So you always,
God.
you in a sense always kind of believed and at least thought there was a God. You never denied that in a sense.
It's so funny you say that because I'm sorry, because my story, I go back and forth
No,
with
it's
so much.
fine.
I remember I have a journal when I was working out, trying to make my whole life is about getting bigger and gaining weight. So I had this journal, and you should see this journal, guys. It's like I read it, and it's like, and my buddy a long time ago taught me the Lord's Prayer, and so. But I would just before a football game was funny, I would do this, and then I remember when in boot camp in processing, they say, "Are you a Protestant or Catholic?" And I said, "I'm a Christian." It's like it's just so funny, but I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
Like I just
the word.
I know
say,
I wasn't identified as that, but Christ, I had some kind of respect in my heart from that, and then so I had these pagan Christian things. And I read my journal, and it's like, Lord, mother effing, help me get big. Like, I gained this much weight. Like all this. It's just like this pagan prayer to God. Then I would write like a prayer out, but it was like
crazy,
total worldly, mixed in with what my buddies had said about God. But totally not. I was totally not a believer. I was.
But his grace is extended to you like crazy. He knows who you are. He knows what you've been through, and he's working a path for you to get where you are.
So how I say that is, so here I am in the Marine Corps. I'm sitting in church, and I go to boot camp, and I excel. I am selected as the guide of my platoon. So out of 90 guys, there's a guide who carries the flag of the platoon.
Right.
And then there's 4 squad leaders, and you have the guys behind him. So I was the guide on, and I got that, and I kept it. Once I got it, I kept it throughout a boot camp, and so I graduated. The guide of my platoon, and then there's a competition between all the platoons for all the honor men, and I was company of the whole company of 800 people. I was company honor man. So I achieved this thing. I did everything I could do in boot camp, and was blessed. And I remember I graduated boot camp, and all those prayers to God, I threw those in the garbage. I just
Self-sufficient, self-made. You did it yourself.
But as I look back on my life, I see the lifelines that God was putting out.
Wow.
I see Him trying to find a way to my heart, and me never surrendering, to that. And so, how this all come together is crazy. So I get a call. My mom's in Ohio. I'm in boot camp. I'm out of boot camp now. I'm on Camp Pendleton living. I get a call from my mom saying, "Hey, why don't you come home this weekend? I'm going to be there, and I'll have Derek pick you up," because they were using my truck.
Right.
And so I go and I get a ride to this place in San Clemente, and all of a sudden my dad pulls up in the truck, and I haven't seen him. He was gone before I left for Marine Corps.
Okay.
So I was gone. He missed me leaving for the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
and my brother got married in June, and I couldn't be there because I was in boot camp.
Right.
And then he missed his first son's wedding.
Okay.
So just like,
Yeah. More
Think about
fodder.
that for a second.
More fodder for the anger.
how do
more
you
kindling.
miss your first son's wedding? You know.
Well, you're messed up.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gone.
He's
gone.
lost
Yeah,
in the world, and
yeah.
so I haven't seen him.
Yeah.
So he picks me up, and I'm trapped, right? So I do want to go home. You know, I do want to see my family.
Was it a setup or coincidental?
It was set up. No,
Okay,
it was for him, his part. You
Okay,
know?
yeah.
So I'm here walking back. You know, I'm talking to him, and I started dating this girl named Kimberly at
Right.
the time, and so I drive back with him, and so he talks about all this kind of self-help stuff, like he's changed and how he's got his life back together, and
But you're smelling the same old stuff.
I
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
the trust. There's no trust there.
Yeah, sure.
There's no
Yeah.
trust at all, with my dad.
Yeah.
And so we started the process through a little bit there about, what are you doing and where you been and
Right.
what's going on. And so, he's still my dad. At the end of the day, he's my dad.
Yeah.
So that plays that
Sure.
still takes effect.
Yeah.
And so we drive back, and I actually, my mom was, again, back east.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I kind of had I met with him and my brothers, and we talked, and so it was so much so I'm like, hey, why don't you meet Kimberly? So Kimberly and I remember going over to a place he was staying at, and
And what are you? How old are you now?
I was-
20,
I was
19,
20.
20? Okay, yeah.
it was right before the Gulf War.
Okay.
And
Wow.
so I was 20 years old, and I remember taking Kimberly over, and we're talking to him, and he's spewing. I just keep on saying this because I just remember vividly, like, I'm gonna fix it. And I'm reading these
You
self-help
just got to be
books,
dying
and-
inside.
Yeah, I'm like, well, I'm hoping, there's that hope always, though, that
Yeah,
because
it's
because
true.
he's still your dad,
Yeah.
you really want to see it, but you just go by your past,
yeah.
you don't trust it.
Right.
And so I remember being there, and he met Kimberly, and we're talking, and it was a good dinner. I felt hopeful, like, okay, maybe he's going to turn his
wow.
life around.
Okay.
So then fast forward to my mom calling me. That was the story I already told you.
Okay.
He had
The wreck,
drunk,
yeah.
went off Euclid Street in the ice plants.
And then you came and
I came
spit on
and
him.
call him
Yeah.
a piece,
Yeah.
whatever, and then spit on him, and then I leave, and he winds up going out. So what happens is the Gulf War breaks out, and I'm slotted to go, and my dad was making a legal U-turn, and he got pulled over, and he gave him the name. It was so funny. He gave him the name Thomas Sayers when he got pulled over. I'll just never forget this
What?
name. So he had aliases. Every time he got pulled over
Okay.
drunk, he'd give him a different name. And
Okay.
so. And if you didn't know, news, if
Yeah.
you get whatever name you give the cops when
Yeah.
you get pulled over, that's what name you get booked under.
Okay.
Even though it's not your real name.
Okay.
So he's booked under
I
Thomas
hope
Sayers.
that
It's
never
hilarious.
happens.
Yeah.
You never know. I hope that never happens.
Just know it's for
Yeah,
real.
just thanks. I'll use
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
My name is Bub
Greg
Coons.
Munck.
Yes.
I'm Bub Coons.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that. I'm Bob Matosi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bob is so.
Oh, you don't want to say that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, he's
Yeah.
already has his complications of the past. Oh, we've seen you before,
Yes,
sir.
yeah. Well, you look different.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. Change.
Yeah.
We're starting working out. Anyway, so we're.
So the Gulf War broke out, and your dad does a
Gulf
U-turn,
War.
a legal
Yeah.
U-turn.
He gets pulled over, and so he gets put in jail, and so everything comes forward. So he can't escape the drunk
Yeah.
driving, the 12 I think he had, and possession and dealing, and there's some other things
all
that he
comes
had,
out.
embezzlement, and just
Wow.
he always said I want to cash though.
Here you go.
And so I remember, so just kind of putting it together right before the Gulf War. So that happened to my dad. He's in jail. So my brother Rob, my oldest brother, is married, and then he's my sister-in-law Heather, her good friend, passes away in a tragic car accident. So he goes to the funeral. So my brother Rob's sitting at the funeral, and he hears a message from the pastor, and like, oh my God, the guy's talking to me,
Yeah.
and gives his life to Christ.
So Rob comes
So
first.
Rob becomes a
Right.
believer. He's
Okay.
the first. He's the first person selected in God's army from my family. And then he goes, "Hey, there's this Harvest Crusade thing going on," and it was Chuck Smith and Greg Laurie at the Pacific Amphitheater.
Yep.
And it was the first one in 1990. He's like, "Why don't you want to come?" I went. I went to the first Harvest Crusade, and it was 5 nights. And I remember, Greg Laurie speaking every night, and man, it was like a dagger to my heart.
Yeah.
And I went back the next night. Then I went back the next night. And then so the last night, I think it was August 19th, 1990. It was a Friday. Pacific Amphitheater, we're sitting there. I'd seen all these people come forward to receive Christ. And so all of a sudden that night, Greg said, "Hey, it's not about religion. It's about a relationship with God." And then that God in the Bible that you hear about, God on Easter and Christmas, he's real. The God in the manger is real, and he wants to have a relationship with you. And for whatever reason, at that moment in time, the skies opened up, man, and I remember he did a call like he did the other night. So, people are walking down to receive Christ, and I just was sitting there and I just started to weep, and I just started to ask God to help take this pain away from me. And I remember because Kimberly said, and I remember all of a sudden I stood up. I stood up I stood up in my seat, and it was like this almost Holy Spirit, now naming it, just power inside of me, like standing up. I remember Kimberly saying, "Hey, do you want me to go with you?" And I said, "No, I need to do this on my own. This is between me and God."
Wow.
And I remember just stepping out in the aisle and walking. I couldn't get down all the way because all the aisles were packed.
Sure.
And I just remember surrendering my life to God. And here's what I said to him. I said, "God, if you could help me stop doing the things I know that are wrong, I want to be your man." And I said, and God, help me to forgive my dad, and help me because I hate my father, and I want to be your man. And that was my prayer.
That's a
the
great
simple
prayer.
pagan
That's a great
prayer of a man just saying.
At that point, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I think that was the Holy Spirit. I mean,
It was the Holy Spirit, but it was a man who doesn't know God crying out to him.
I get that. Which we all start there, right?
Yeah.
With us, like I would say, people like that. What a thing to say! Like I want to be God's man or woman. That's what.
And help me to do because I knew
what was
the way I
going
was
on.
living was wrong.
Yeah.
I knew it, and I think all of us have that sense of right and wrong, and
we have
that's
a
from
conscience.
God.
Absolutely.
And as Greg said there, and Greg says all the time, and I say it all the time to people, there's a God-shaped hole in our heart, and we try to fill with everything the world has to offer, but it never satisfies. And man, that was textbook of. I witnessed it with my father. I mean, sure, talk about trying to fill.
You saw it all around you.
I was trying to fill with everything, girls and football and my own personal achievements, and it never satisfied. It never filled the space. And then that moment right there in time, that at the Harvest Crusade, man, I got saved hardcore.
Yeah.
Man, I surrendered to God. And what's hilarious is I didn't know the words.
Right, of course,
I was clueless of the words. So
better that we don't sometimes.
my buddy came over, Kenny, and next day, and he's like, "Hey, sir, I heard you're like born again." And I go, "I don't know what that means, right?" So I'm like, "No, I just decided." Here's what I said. I go, "No, I decided to stop living for myself and start living for God."
Yeah.
But my gosh, I was absolutely born again.
Sure.
As we know now,
you're supposed to,
in Scripture, as you read the Bible in that passage. I was born again, big time, man, and I did. There was that moment in time where I realized that God is bigger than anything, and then I need to align my life with Him. It was the first start, and man, what a journey it was from that moment, man. It's just like it's unbelievable what God has done in my life, and it didn't all happen at once. I had my moments. And, so right after that,
is the Gulf War.
Yeah, and so
you're saved right before you go to the Gulf War.
Yeah, and so part of that too is what I didn't say is, there's the brother thing. He invited me, but what I said yes though, and started going to church because I was slotted to go to the Gulf War, and I was going to leave in a little bit, and so because of that, then I started thinking, okay, what happens when I die?
Yeah,
and so part of the issue of me saying yes to the Harvest Crusade and being more open was the fact that, hey, I might not die. So the fear of death brought me to the feet of Christ.
What did it feel like? Did the bolt? Did your shoulders drop?
Oh, it was. I had a yoke of a life. My morals, who I was all guided by the world. The world dictated that, and I was a man of the world. Yeah. And that yoke of the pride, the nightmares, the
anger, the unforgiveness,
the frustration, the pain, all that thing. I was hanging on to it. I was carrying it like that scene, I think, from The Mission.
Yes,
he's carrying the stuff up the side of the mud mountain. He keeps on falling, and he finally cut it. I was carrying that yoke, and that. So what does it feel like? It's surrendering that to God and saying, you know what, you're in charge. I help me live for you. I give myself to you. So that's what it immediately felt like.
So it was a literal casting your burdens on Him.
Absolutely,
and he took it and just,
But it was a process. There was a sanctification.
Sure, there always is.
Process,
sure,
right? I had to learn what it means.
Of course.
Well, I can't do that anymore. There's a
behavioral shift because of the relationship.
Because of it, and so those came in steps. And I remember, and I got to tell this story because it's explaining God's comfort in that time. So I just gotten saved. I'm getting ready to leave. I said goodbye to Kimberly. I'm not kidding. We had to say goodbye to each other because I was going on a ship.
Yeah.
and we were actually, I was going to first go on the plane, and so they had all these dates, said, okay, you're going to go this date. So they say, okay, say goodbye to your loved ones. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I love you, bye, kissing me, and come back, and then, okay, we're not leaving yet, so go home. So I go back home, and then a week later we get a date, and literally 6 times this happened. I'm like, honestly, it got to the point where I come back, she's like, would you just leave already? Like, it's so hard.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be leaving on a ship, and so with the Armada to the Gulf War, and so we had a date for that. The ship was leaving, so. And then I remember I got attached to the ship, and we were in Coronado for a week before, and Kimberly would drive down and see me every night. I mean, I just remember I was terrified. Here I am, a new believer, but I'm terrified. I'm going, and we would just weep out to the Lord, man. We would just cry together and like, oh my gosh, we love each other. I finally found somebody we love, and we'd weep to the Lord and say, Lord, please protect Greg. Please, bring me home safely. So we have a week of this. We're saying goodbye, and so you'll get this.
Wow.
Actually, it's the day we're leaving, and I'm late. So it's nothing new, but I'm late for war, dude. I'm late to go to war. I'm late for the ship, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm waving on the side of the road, But no, I made it in time and got on there. But when you leave when you leave the bay, Coronado, when you leave the ship, all the Marines and sailors stand on the edge of the ship.
Sure. I've seen that a million times.
Oh my gosh! And all these guys come out that are old, retired people, and they have their boats and they're driving, and all the Navy U-boats are driving around there.
It's beautiful and scary and amazing.
People are on the sides.
Always the saddest thing to me in all those movies when you see those guys lined up and it's going away. You're like, you have no idea what's going to happen.
Yes, exactly. And so it was that scene, and I remember, and I had to say goodbye to Kimberly really quick, and then so I'm sitting on the edge of the dock. I'm sitting on the edge of the ship, and she's on the dock. And I tell you, without a doubt, God told me I'm coming home.
Wow.
And from that, there was a sense of peace. She wasn't crying. I thought it'd be like, oh my gosh. It wasn't any of that.
Yeah.
There was none of that. It was all just this peace that passes all understanding. In a time of where honestly, God's Spirit came and touched us at that moment. Like, say, hey, trust me, it's going to be okay. Anyway, but I was on ship, and I'd write to Kimberly every day. I wrote her every single day.
Wow.
She has binders of the
amazing.
things I wrote. Yeah. I'll have to step back into that one day. But I remember this guy, Jeff, I think Noble was his name. He was a Christian.
Okay.
And so I had a horrible mouth. My mouth was just, I cursed all the time.
It's still.
Yeah. I love Jesus, but cuss a little, But I grew up a world's kid, and I went in the Marine Corps. Every adjective right now is a cuss word.
Yeah.
I remember he told me, he goes, hey, Greg, profanity is a feeble mind trying to express itself forcefully. Yeah. And I still use that today, and I go, you know what, that's so true. And then I tried to work on it. I'm still working on it.
No, you've progressed.
Yes, I have. Yes. But one thing I did over there is I read the whole New Testament. So we were on a bunk. I had 5 guys on a.
Was that under his influence? Did Jeff help you through that, or just
you
did this on your own?
On my own. I actually Kimberly's sister gave me a Bible.
Okay.
When I left, and I started to read the whole New Testament, and then it was so funny because as I started to read God's Word, He started all the things I would kind of make fun of Kimberly before. It's like, oh, we can't have sex. I'd be like, what? Come on, give me a break, or all this. I would totally kind of mock her and like, oh, God can wait and all this stuff. And I would read the scriptures. I'd be like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Yeah. What did I do? Like, what kind? She's a princess she's created by God, and I treated her like that. Like, what a lose. I just, it was a process of repenting, and so that was the first step for me of that sanctification process. For lack of a better word, just of Him drawing me closer to Him.
Yeah, well, showing more of Himself to you and describing His character and virtues to you that you want to connect with and go, you deserve that. My wife deserves that. The people around me deserve for me to be a more godly man every day of my life. Yeah.
And then another moment where I felt the presence of God, believe it or not, is when the night before we're going to go into Saudi Arabia and go up through Kuwait. The night before, they're lock and loaded. So they issue the ammunition, you're loading your magazines. I mean, talk about
real
getting
deal. Real deal.
And I don't know, man. There's this what the Iraqi Iraqis did to the Kuwaiti people was just atrocious.
Right.
You know, they raped and pillaged
Yeah.
the land, stuff you don't even hear about
No,
in the news. It was horrible what they did. And we would have these Kuwaiti college students be our translators, and we got to meet them and just to hear the stories, what they did to their families, and it was just disgusting.
Wow.
And so you really felt like you were
Protecting and
yeah,
doing it.
liberating.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I understand the political,
Yeah,
the
whatever.
oil, gas
Yeah.
behind it, but at that moment you're really liberating this college student wants his
Yeah.
country back. You know,
It didn't
And
mean
so-
the other one isn't true.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. No, it doesn't
yeah.
mean that there's not that issue's not
Yeah,
there,
right.
but at that moment, it's a human. You know, these Kuwaiti people were
Absolutely.
taken from their home, and
Yeah.
so we were going to take it back for them.
Yep.
And I just remember that peace that night, again, of God, just
Yeah.
in that you're going to be okay. And so, I don't know how far you want me to get into.
Well, I think
the Kuwaiti experience, but
Well, a little bit. I mean, because
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. Because I mean, no one wants war, but it's a necessary thing sometimes. And
Yeah.
you know, it's really interesting to hear it from a Christian perspective.
Right.
You know, it's so.
Yeah.
You told me some stories on the side.
Yeah.
You know, that were pretty brutal, and it's like
Yeah.
I don't know how you even survive that or come back and or even dealing with the whole PTSD thing. That just
Yeah. It's interesting because there's guys that like I remember we had a speaker at an event, and I just remember him speaking, and he talked about Mogadishu and him and the Black Hawk Down. He was part of that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I remember him, Jeff Struker, talking about that. And he talked about it so freely.
Yeah.
And he did it in such a way that was just so honoring. And I haven't gotten there yet, you know. So
Right.
I told him, I remember telling him that, hey, that was powerful.
Wow.
'Cause- And then
Yep.
the way he intertwined it with the gospel too is just powerful because it's so true. And I'm learning how to express that, you know. I haven't.
yeah.
So personally, one-on-one, I can tell stories,
Yeah.
you know, and that. But you know, part of my job in the Marine Corps was graves and registrations. So I would work with the unit to help grade, and that was when people got hurt. You body bagged them and tagged them, and you process them, and for the administrative folks, you know.
Wow.
And so I don't know how I got on that unit, but a lot of what I deal with, you know, happens in those situations and
Right.
that.
What the things you must have seen.
Yeah,
and the
and
people.
then it's just, you know, you have, you know, just to be just honest and frank, you know, you come in a situation and, you know, there's a body blown apart
Right.
and you're having to, you know, there's multiple bodies and you're having to
assemble
put a
them
puzzle
or
piece
something.
together of human life, and these people you know, some I knew closely and others I've seen them, they're part of a unit, you know, and it just it's hard to explain, you know, the smell and the sound and it's
Horrible.
It's like you know, being in combat. So we're in Kuwait, and we're in there, and it's a combat zone, and I didn't take my flak jack off for a week. You know, I didn't. You know, you pee on yourself. You know, you didn't, or you know, if you just because you don't want to stand up and get out of your thing,
Right.
or all these things that like after 3 days of just living in your own stuff, you don't care. Like you just don't, it's just amazing how what we
Get used to
smell
it the
all that.
minute,
It's nuts. But I remember one time this one situation, you know, we had to call for fire we were getting
surrounded.
There was a unit, a Kuwaiti unit that was putting mortar fire
on you guys
on our position, and we needed to call for fire. And I got combat promoted in the Gulf War for this situation, and I wound up checking the lieutenant and saying, no, that's not our location. You know, we're going to get killed. And I was the map reader for logistics.
Gotcha.
And so I knew where we were, and I checked the fire and called the right fire. And
so the wrong coordinates were first said, hey, fire here, and then you
fire
shoot,
here,
and you're like, no,
that change it.
Okay,
You know, because it's like, that's gonna.
Wow. And he honored
give
that,
them
the lieutenant.
opportunity.
Like,
yeah,
okay,
because
so,
you know, it's just in the heat of battle. You
Sure,
know, it's
yeah,
like
I can imagine.
I
was
like chaos.
Yeah,
but what I wanted to say is that feeling, like, what is it like? People ask me, what's it like being in combat?
Yeah.
You know, and here's exactly what it feels like. That whenever you are driving and you drive by an accident and you see a mangled piece of metal, and maybe you see blood or you see a towel of blood, that feeling you get when you see that, and then
times
playing,
10 all the time.
yes,
Yeah.
and then playing in the biggest championship game of your life.
Yeah.
So those two,
kind of a yeah.
things, the complete fear of that feeling 100% of the time, that's exactly what it feels like to be in combat. That's it. That's the best
pretty
way I
visceral.
can articulate to someone who hasn't been there.
It's a good explanation.
Of what
I
it feels like.
I kind of feel it. Like
always
that.
going.
Yeah.
You're amped. I
Yeah.
mean, you're on alert. You sleep very little.
Yeah.
I slept underneath the Humvee, and anyway, the images I struggle with the most is stem from bagging and tagging my brothers.
Right.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
And anyway,
Did you find yourself at that time like praying over each one of them as you were growing, or was it more just like I'm just devastated, I don't even know what to say here?
It's hard. It's hard to ascertain. It's hard to put into words. What you're feeling.
Right.
I was. At night, I would cry out to God, but like in that heat of it, it's just what people do different things around.
Absolutely,
around.
That's why I asked. I was curious.
When you have that feeling the whole time, it's just like, and you're around the dead. It's just when you hear stories in the news like what happened in Abu Ghraib prison,
right, yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I totally understand how that could happen.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not saying what they did is right, but I totally see how, to our own devices in that environment,
yep.
you're asking somebody to put in themselves their life on the line,
yep.
and then just to act completely.
Right.
No, you're there
right.
to defend your life. It's kill or be killed.
Yeah.
It's that instinct, and so when you're around when there was other detail where we would grab the Iraqi soldiers and after interrogation, and we would have them go pick up their dead. And
yeah.
so I was on a detail escorting them to grab their dead. But you'd see soldiers pick up dead bodies and dance with them and take pictures with them. And for me, it was like, it creeped me out.
That's creepy. Yeah.
It's I didn't want to touch
great.
it.
I was talking the other day, and you go, I got a meeting with Bub. And then Bug goes, yeah, I got a meeting with Greg. And then I find out later you guys went to an action film. So
I did. Rambo Last Blood.
I know, but still.
Sure.
My question is a real question. When you see those films, is it different than just an average person like me seeing the film?
I'll answer your question by fast forwarding. So Saving Private Ryan comes out.
Yep.
And so I go to Saving Private Ryan. Here, I have bad dreams. I have thoughts all the time. Smells bring me back.
Yeah.
I
slam doors,
loud noises. Yeah. I react. I go from 0 to 100. I have these little elements that I'm dealing with that I don't think are issues at all. And we go to Saving Private Ryan, and I'm watching the movie, and man, the sound of the bullets in Saving Private Ryan, man, they got that down perfect. Yeah. It's just like that. And so that opening scene in Saving Private Ryan. So I can't explain. Like for me, PTSD is, hey, of course everyone's going to have post-traumatic stress. Yep. We went through a lot of crap. You're going to have experiences and everyone deals with it.
Absolutely.
So
different levels.
That was when I first started. I didn't, it was I was embarrassed of that tag. I didn't know what that was, and so I didn't really identify with that. So. But I didn't know I was affected in any way. I didn't realize it. Kimberly could say more to that, but so we're at Saving Private Ryan. I hope the opening scene happens, and all of a sudden I have this desire to go to the bathroom. I have to take a leak.
Yeah.
So I get up to go take a leak, and I go to the toilet, and I can't go to the bathroom. And I'm like, what the heck? Why can't I go to the bathroom? Yeah. It's like just this. And then I get back, and I'm watching the scene, and then so we watch the whole movie, and then it leaves, and then everyone's leaving, and I'm just sitting there, like,
wow.
Yeah. And I can't explain it. I can't. It's weird. I'm talking to you, telling you the story. It's weird. Like I'm sitting there like in a catatonic kind of state, and Kimberly's talking to me, and I'm processing, and I'm not responding to her. Then I just start weeping, and I just start crying, and Kimberly's freaking out. We're newly married at that time, and she's like, "What's going on with my husband?" And then the guys come in to clean the theater, and it's like, you guys have to leave, and so I kind of get my wits and walk out. But that was my first.
That was a while after too, right? That was,
it was a while
98.
After. It was. So it was a while after. I haven't processed it.
Yeah.
So to answer your question though, Bobby, that I have to now prepare myself. Like what was that movie that Clint did with the sniper? American Sniper.
Yeah, American Sniper. Yeah.
I have to mentally prepare myself for that kind of setting. So like the shoot 'em up action films, no big deal.
Yeah.
But when it's on a a note where it like American Sniper really affected me, you know, and then so just like an example of what happened after that, I knew it was coming, I knew what it was about, and I prepared myself, and so I go to the movie and I'm sitting there, and then I kind of just walk out of the movie because they had the, you know, the funeral scene and all the people with the flags, and every time I see that, man, it just, American life is so precious, and it just, so I get up and I'm just standing outside here at Aliso Viejo Edwards, you know, and then everyone gets out, my family comes, and I'm just crying. I just crying, and I'm walking out with my family and stuff like that. We get home, and then Kimberly says something, and I blow up, you know, and I walk. And so here it is, like we saw it late. It was like 11:30, and I'm walking out in the park till like 2 a.m. I'm walking in a circle at the park,
just trying
a couple hours, and like nobody knows where I'm at. Kimberly's like, she's calling, I'm not answering. It's just like these things that I look back and like, what the heck? Like, how does it? So that's how it manifests itself, and I don't. It's a, you know, I guess it's anxiety. It stems itself and all that stuff that. But those are a few instances where I can say, that's weird, Greg.
Sure.
Like, what are you acting so weird for? You know.
But that's the experience.
So that's how it comes out. That's the best way to kind of articulate it.
So let's fast forward a little bit, okay? So I could talk about this, and I could talk about with you for hours, but just to keep it moving. So you're out of the Gulf War, you're back, you're in business, you're doing great, you're an entrepreneur, you even have, you know, your own record label. Right. You kind of just say one thing, you feel this calling. I remember you and I even talked about it, and you step out and decide to go become, you know, the executive senior pastor at Crossline and do this part of the church, and so talk a little bit about that change and why you decided to do that, and then come back to your father with what happened to him and how we wrap that up with.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I got back in the Gulf War, and I just want to share these things because there are pieces to it. Like once I said yes to Jesus at that moment after Harvest Crusade, I've seen one miracle after another in my life, and my brother had an opening at his a semiconductor company, and he offered me, you know, and then he got me an interview, and I got the job as an inside sales guy, and then I got that job, and I got promoted 7 times within 3-4 years, and then became a regional manager of Asia Pacific and managed 175 million in sales. And by the time I was 30, I was making with stock options like $500,000 a year. I was a 300 commission plus base thing, and then I had stock, and so I'm 30 years old and doing really well. So God had blessed me. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying.
No, it's just what happened.
God,
I remember.
God had blessed me. But it was so funny at the Q Logic stage. I remember before I got the job. I remember praying to God, going, God, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Like I have no idea.
They're going to find me out.
It was that prayer. I prayed that every day for 6 months. Like, God, I don't know what I'm doing. Lord, help me. Help me find out what I need to learn and all that.
I don't even know where Asia is.
I had no idea. I just had no idea. Like sales, I'd never really done it. Never worked for a corporate company. And, I was in the Marine Corps, and so I had, you know, I was high and tight.
Sure.
I was a good worker. I know how to work hard, but I didn't know what I was doing there, and so I had to learn on the fly. And God blessed me. And I achieved so much there. And then during that time when we first got married, I remember that pastor from Huntington Beach, church goes, "Hey Greg, why don't you come be a counselor at camp?" You know, and I was actually still in the Marine Corps at this time when I was just finishing the Marine Corps. And I remember I said this, like I say it all the time, and I go, Dan, there's no way, dude. I'm gonna cuss at the kids. I'm the last guy you want. And he goes, you know what, Greg? It's through the blood of Jesus that any of us are worthy.
Amen.
And so you're absolutely the right guy to go. Yeah. And my journey's been just like that. People
opening door
for me, and I step into it, and then he blesses me. So I went to that camp, and I went to that Christian camp, and I may have cussed the kids, yes.
Yeah, you probably did.
But they stuck me at the Church of Nazarene. It was a multi-church thing from all of Southern California. So we had churches from like Inglewood and Maywood and Long Beach area and some of the more urban, rougher areas. And so these kids would come up, and so they stuck me with all these inner city kids.
Yeah.
And I loved it, man. Yeah. And I ran it like a platoon.
I'm sure you did.
And so I'm
sure you did.
And then we did corporal punishment when they would be acting up and do dirt angels and the whole thing. It probably wouldn't fly in the youth ministry today.
No, probably not.
Those guys
put your toes on the end of the line, you slimy worms.
I know. It was hilarious. I just think back because I was a Marine, man. That's how you knew.
Sure. The guy asked. You just said yes.
I said yes.
Great thing about you that I've always seen my whole life with you is a lot of people don't do. God does prompt you, and you say yes.
Yeah.
It's the Isaiah thing. Well, here I am.
Well,
you could have said
absolutely.
no to that.
Yeah.
You could have said, that's not what I do. Or you could have said no to all these things. And you always step in when God opens the door.
But that's it. But I think, besides saying yes to Jesus,
Yeah.
I think the greatest thing we can do is say yes to stepping into service.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Step in.
Because that's how God changed my life. Because through that, I didn't know what I was doing, but
Yeah.
God, He gave me the tools. He equipped me.
Yeah.
He doesn't call you out when you're fully equipped. He equips you as you go.
Of course, or none of us would be ready. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like-
And so I said yes, and then I remember, so I gave my testimony. They say, Greg, give your testimony. I'm like, okay. And I swear I cussed. I said that.
Yeah.
Junior hires. I said the S word, I think. And I felt, but
Of course
it
you did.
fit, with my
Yeah,
story,
just-
it fits so
yeah,
well.
yeah.
And here's that I'm going to answer your question in both ways, my dad and what God did in my life, is that at that moment, I was giving my testimony. And I told a lot of the similar things I've kind of said here, and then how God changed my life and really blessed me. But I remember that first year, I said, but I need you guys to pray for me because I still have hatred for my father. And I don't know how to forgive him, but I know the only way is going to be through the blood of Jesus.
Wow.
And so I remember saying that.
Yep.
And so during that time, that was going on. I gave my testimony at that camp. At the same time, what I didn't know is that my dad got transferred to alcohol. He had cases in San Diego and Orange County, so he served time in Orange County. Then they transferred him down to serve, but he served through the county jail system. He had a 6-year stint, and he was in El Cajon jail. And what happened is somebody invited him to a prison Bible study.
Wow.
There's a window at the prison Bible study. He's like, oh, okay. So he went because of the window. So he went sitting looking outside the window,
And absorbing
And the
all this
guy
stuff.
is speaking. The guy is a lifer that is speaking at church, and then he had 3 sons. This lifer, and my dad had 3 sons.
Wow.
And so he starts talking about the Lord and how, and these people are prisoners and they got life sentences and they're singing the Lord for their comfort and peace, and so they hand him a Bible. And my dad went down to his jail cell and I've done this before, and threw it kind of on the bed, and it opened up to this passage, and I wish I would have. I got to remember what passage, but it was Matthew something, and it just convicted his heart. He says, Lord, if you can help me, when I want to kill this guy for one of the reasons I'm in jail, I want to kill him, and when I get out, and then it's not fair what happened to me, and all this, and he just humbled himself before the Lord,
Finally
and he
owned it
recommitted
all.
his life, or for the real first time did it, whatever it was. He said yes to God. And so fast forward so I go to that Christian camp. That experience happened at the same time I'm giving my testimony. That's happening with him in jail. I don't know. So I get a call from my mom. Hey, I called Rob. I called Derek. Nobody wants to pick. Your dad's getting out early of El Cajon jail.
Your mom's still in the picture here. She's still staying.
They're still
Wow.
married. And she's still in Ohio. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so and then I can't say no to my mom, and Kimberly goes, hey, will you go down with me to go pick up? So we start driving down. I'm not really looking forward to it. And then my wife starts asking me questions about what are some good things about my dad. I remember when I was driving down, I remember saying to my dad was a very loving person, very touchy person, like very caring and that kind of way. And whenever he would make a mistake, he'd always try to ask for forgiveness and apologize. And so that I learned forgiveness in that. And he wasn't prideful that way. He was just a mess. He was, a man who had a mess of a life. And so as we got down to go see him, I was part of me was anxious to see him because I hadn't seen him. So I remember giving him a hug. We're driving back. And he's like, hey, I give my life to Christ, and I'm like, okay, sure, Dad.
Of course you did.
Yeah, right. Okay, Dad. But you know what? Sure enough, he did. He had given us.
And how old were you here?
It was 20, 21.
Okay.
I turned 21 in the Gulf War, so I was 21 years old. Yep. And so we're driving back, and we start talking, and he actually stays at Kimberly's parents' place with us for a little bit, and then he gets his own place. And sure enough, though, he starts working the program. He starts doing the AA.
Yep.
He starts. He gets a job at a motel, because it gives you a place to you can stay there and be the night manager kind of thing. And he does that, and he starts getting his life back together, and then his whole life becomes about recovery and helping people recover. And then so in that process, for over a 2-year period, we start going to lunch, and I could go, Dad, why did you let me do coke with you in 7th grade. And he would just like weep and then, was that a drug run we went on with that? Yeah, and, and
it's kind of all the things that you did when you read the New Testament and looked back and went, how could I do that? It's the same thing. Your dad's going through the same thing.
Yeah, it's processing through it. And part of the reconciliation is just, talking through that. And see, my mom's the opposite. Let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
My dad was like, he wants to, hey, let's get it all on the table. And so I learned that from him. It's still
your
today, it's a trait.
Let's just talk about it.
I'm a truth guy. And that's just, I'm not passive aggressive.
So it took a little. You gave him a hug, so you're already willing to do that, and the hatred goes away probably a little bit when the Greg Laurie thing happened. Then you went to camp and did your testimony, and this process is happening. And now you guys are really, but you're in ministry together, serving the Lord together. You see each other all the time. You've given him 5 grandkids. I don't know how many other grandkids he has with the other brothers and stuff.
There's 5 others too. So it's
incredible. So God has redeemed and restored.
There's 11 now. 12.
Wow.
12.
So 12. So yours really is a miraculous kind of healing, redemption, restoration of the full family.
Absolutely
incredible.
Well, it is incredible because you saw, and then. Him and I, we speak now, and I always start. There was a boy, and I say all these horrible things, and there was a father, and then I don't know if you see my testimony, and then we get closer together, and then that boy was me, that dad was me, and now the father I hated so passionately, I love. He's become a hero of mine.
We usually ask this question that I want to phrase it different with you. Usually, I'd say something like, "What are you concerned about?" in our culture today, but I want to take that from a point of view of you being a patriot and a soldier,
right?
And go, what is it that young people can understand about what you guys do and what people like you do to fight for our freedoms? And I don't know if they understand it.
Yeah,
and maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so funny. I have so many views when it comes to that, and so many emotions when it comes. Like the whole controversy with NFL players kneeling.
You're right.
When you see people burning a flag or stepping on a flag, I don't know what I would do if I saw somebody burning a flag and a thing. I'd probably grab the flag. I'd grab the flag. I'd pick it up, and I'd probably get in trouble or whatever it is. But here's why. It's because if people understood the lives that have been sacrificed, like really understood. I know they can see a movie and that, but if you don't know anybody, you don't feel it. If you don't, then you're never going to understand it. And so, I understand the cultural sensitivities that are going on. I do understand. I work. That's why I love the Marine Corps. They took a bunch of people from every race and religion and creed, put us together, and we were all brothers, and we'd die for each other. It didn't matter where you came from. It didn't matter what you're about. We all loved each other. And so when it comes to cultural acceptance, I think when we all strip away our color and our ethnicity and all that stuff that's a part of who we are, but it's not who we are. As we're all Americans. So I do get fired up when I see that, because I for me it's just I could never do that. Because of the lives that I personally know and were sacrificed. So we can salute now. We do the national anthem before football games, and sometimes we're out there and sometimes we're not. We're out there. I always salute.
Absolutely.
And then after it's done, I take my hat off and I stick it up to my brothers that I lost, on the battlefield, and I never want to forget them. And so when I see a culture for reasons that they feel they're justified in doing it, I understand that they feel that they have a cause that they want to bring attention to, and that America has done them wrong at some level. But with that said, America is the greatest country in the world because of the opportunity it gives to every race and creed.
Well, their very ability to do what they're saying and to protest is proof that the American system works.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't borrow from that and then attack it. But it's
it's just a crazy thing. So when I see that, it does. It's very emotional for me when I see that. I just don't understand it. And I just think it's
emotional for me, and I'm never even fought in a war. But
I think it's just ignorance. I think if they really understood it, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do that. There's a way to protest.
At least try to understand it and talk about through it. All right. Last thing we do is you have one thing to say before you die. I'm going to put it that way. You got about a minute to say it. Look in that camera and go, here's the one thing I want the world to know. Really? Yep.
Wow. if I could say one thing, that would be that the meaning of life is having a relationship with God, and that is only done through Jesus Christ, having a relationship with him. It's all about surrendering your life and yourself to the work of Jesus Christ that he did for you. He paid the ultimate price on a cross for your sins, the ones, your worst sins, the past, present, and future for all humanity. And when we surrender our life to the Lord, he provides comfort and peace. And it doesn't mean life is easy, but he provides peace through the pain and frustration. And he is the only reconciler of social class and race and religion and border. He brings us all together. And it's the greatest thing you can do is surrender your life to Jesus Christ. And it's the meaning of life. You want to know what the meaning of life is? It's having a relationship with God.
I love you.
I love you too, man.
So good to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on the Bub and Bob Show. God bless you.
We're out.